Hey everybody, this is David here from Team Powerhouse Global Banker with the PowerCast from Team Powerhouse. Very excited to share with you today our newest and most exciting guest. Her name is Jennifer Crowley, and she's an amazing woman. She's an insurance phenomenon with Realogy Insurance and been about 16 years in the business. And we have many things to talk about today. If you have not joined us yet live, a couple places to please go. Obviously Facebook, you have Instagram, and then you have, of course, YouTube. Go to our YouTube channel and subscribe. Go to Team Powerhouse Real Estate. Go and subscribe. We look forward to seeing you there. Please check us out on our TikTok channel. We have 100 members now, 100 members on TikTok. Very exciting. The last 2 weeks, I think we picked up 35 new ones. We're looking to hit 1,000, which we can go live over there on TikTok as well. Team Powerhouse sells on TikTok as well. And again, Jennifer Crowley, Realogy Insurance, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited. I'm nervous.
Don't be nervous. Hey, we're live. Worst thing, we say a couple things we're not supposed to say, and it's just kind of oopsie, no big deal. So in homeowners insurance, we're going to talk about, a buyer goes to buy a house, and one of the most important things I tell people is you got to start shopping for homeowners insurance, right?
Yes.
Why is someone would need that homeowners insurance in buying a house?
So a lot of people actually don't realize insurance is part of the process. They wait until the very last minute when a mortgage broker is saying, oh, by the way, I need a copy of your home insurance. So really, if any damage happens to this brand new investment that you worked so hard to get,
The most important.
a lot of people wait years to be able to buy a home, and then the last thing they think about is how am I going to protect it if something goes wrong?
It's very important to have good insurance too, because a lot of people will go, I've been to Geico. I'm going to use it for example, and it's very inexpensive. This is the most important investment of your life.
Right.
You don't have to go and spend a ton of money on insurance. People are very confused about what insurance costs are. We're going to go over a bunch of different things over here. Let's talk about, when should a buyer start talking about insurance? When they're going to buy a house, right? Obviously, sorry.
No, yeah. I recommend when they're going through the home inspections. So you have an offer accepted, you're moving along, now you're getting those inspections, you're finding out, am I buying this house? Is there anything wrong with this house? What are my costs going to come up? That's a really good time because that's when I'm going to start asking, how old is the roof? How old is the furnace? What kind of condition is the house in so that I know where to place the insurance for you? That's a good time to find out from your home inspector, by the way. How old is my roof? What am I in for? Because some things can be negotiated, right? You can go back to the seller and say, hey, I'm going to have a problem because the roof is at the end of its useful life.
Right, and if a house has a useful life to be considered 5 years or less, typically by an inspection company or an insurance company or a mortgage company, and the mortgage broker and the insurance agent are very much tied in hand and talking to each other because what kind of documents does the lender actually need from you to make that whole thing happen? What's it called?
So we have to provide an insurance binder. So that's showing insurance is in place, it's effective for the closing day, and it either has to be paid in full or we can send an invoice. So we work directly with that lender to make sure we're providing the accurate documentation.
Also part of your closing costs, if you have closing costs, right?
Yeah.
So that's important for the lender to know what's going on through the process. So homeowners insurance, again, there's lots of different kinds of homeowners insurance when buying a house. And depending on the size of the house, maybe what kind of goes into the different pieces to the puzzle of homeowners insurance when a buyer's buying? I mean, how about different towns or size of house?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I would always say, like Dave and I could be buying the same house, right?
Yes.
We will pay completely different rates for insurance.
Now, why would that be? Is that because I'm a guy and you're a girl?
Well, it could be.
No.
It could be, but I had a home claim.
Yeah.
I had a really large home claim.
Yes.
Recent in the last couple of years, and you may not. So
Right.
that claim may be affecting my future rates. Also,
So hold on a second. If you've had a home before and you've claimed an insurance claim because you had a problem, let's say a storm or something happened, your rates are going to be higher.
that claim will follow you for 5 years, regardless of where you're living.
Okay.
And when we run loss reports on the homes, we'll also see claims on the house you're about to buy that weren't yours for the past 5 years.
So let's go into that. It's a great question you point out because I have a client that was looking to buy a house or he's buying a house, right? And they found, or the sellers told us in advance, there was a house fire here about a year and a half ago. And in the house fire that was there a year and a half ago, they had, I don't know, maybe $25,000 worth of claims, which is great for the buyer because they're buying this house, it's got a new roof, it's structurally sound, and all these great things with the house. Does it affect the buyer's insurance or not necessarily?
So this is the perfect example. I sell for multiple companies, and what I've learned is that not every company wants the same risk. So I've had an underwriter at company A say, we don't care about prior claims, they weren't yours, so we can just ignore them. And I had another underwriter for the same house, same client at company B say, no, thank you, we don't want to insure this house because it was a large fire that was not a total loss, and we're concerned about the water damage and potential mold by the fire team putting out the fire.
Which in actuality is kind of silly, right? Because let's be honest, if a house has been, first of all, when it gets an insurance claim, they're bringing people in there, right? You have licensed contractors, okay, talk about it.
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay, that's right, because sometimes
people will do work themselves.
Okay.
Sometimes they don't get proper permits.
Oh.
So what this particular underwriter was concerned about was, we don't have all the documentation that everything was fixed and fixed correctly, so I don't want to insure this house because of potential future problems based on this.
So
that company said, no, thank you. Where another company, I was like, okay, here's your rate. $1,500, $1,200, whatever.
So let me ask you a question. If a seller has a fire, has everything done documented by licensed contractors, right? And they're able to provide that to the buyers, and they can, if they have any kind of questions for you as the insurance agent or the insurance people that you go back to, and they see all this stuff and they go, okay, great, green light, I love it. It makes it easier or better for the buyer and the insurance company?
Yeah, a lot of people, I'm a consumer, let's just put that out there, right? I bought a house, I have insurance, I shop for insurance every year, I shop around again. But you want to be honest with the company that is going to be paying the claims if there's damage. So the more information you can put on the table, the better decision that company can make when they're assessing the risk. Do I want to insure this? And at what rate am I going to charge for it, right? And the worst they can say is no, or they come back with a higher rate and you go somewhere else, but at least you know for sure.
Right.
So in the case of, say, a trampoline we were talking about earlier, or I have a Pitbull mix, I'm just gonna say it's a lab. Don't do that.
Right.
Because if the insurance company comes out and does one of their inspections and sees your lab Pitbull running around your yard, they could cancel you. Or if your dog were to ever bite somebody, they could deny the claim because they wouldn't have insured you had they known the dog was there to begin with.
All right, we just segued into something that's kind of really hot topic, right?
Yeah.
Because
being honest, hot topic.
Hot topic because of being honest over here in the insurance business. Not to mention just being honest, the insurance business and getting an insurance for your home. But if you found a house that had some claims, it doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna have a higher insurance necessarily.
Not necessarily. Nope.
As a matter of fact, the home is now newer and has more
so it's had updates. Yep.
So the house has probably even maybe less insurance price because it's the fact that it's a newer, less likely to be a problem again.
We have to do an accurate replacement cost and a new replacement cost. So lumber prices were on the rise.
Yes.
Well, even when I had my home claim, my kitchen was previously updated in the 80s. It had that sheet laminate counter, that one-piece sheet laminate matching backsplash. It was beautiful. But now it's got the subway tile backsplash, it's got the granite counters, and if I were to replace my kitchen now, I need more money than if I were replacing the 1980s kitchen. So anytime you're doing things and updating your home, you want to update your insurance.
That makes good sense. By the way, viewers, if you're out there watching and you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask us questions over here. Instagram, Facebook, please don't hesitate because we have Jonathan Bias over here with looking for people with your questions. Ask Jennifer, who's very smart. And maybe you can trick her. Maybe we can take a chance and see if she doesn't know something, which I doubt. Jonathan, any questions so far that you see on the screen at all?
Nope, nothing.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure you're keeping an eye on that because I never missed things before. I got heckled last time. Why did I answer the questions when we were being asked over here? All right, so let's talk about the pit bull thing. Let's talk about animals. So you own a home.
Yep.
You love your pit bull, and pit bulls are wonderful dogs, and they're dogs that are loving and caring. They have this bad reputation. Rottweilers are one of the most beautiful dogs in my opinion also. German Shepherds, Dobermans, all these dogs which are quote unquote aggressive, but they're not really aggressive unless you teach them to be aggressive, right? They're the most amazing with families and kids typically because they're very protective of family. But insurance companies look at them and they see potential hazards because of a past reputation. So how does this work?
So, and again, I'm not licensed in claims or actuary duties, right?
We're not licensed in claims.
But they will look at the risk and the claim payout. And when
Okay.
at my prior company, there was a dog bite claim. And I will never forget this day because the claims agent came around with a photo of the guy was in his mid-20s. He had a dog bite to the face.
Oh,
and
wow.
after several surgeries, and I don't know what breed it was. I doubt it was a Chihuahua, but I don't know what breed it was. After several reconstructive surgeries, he still had an issue with his face. And I don't know how much he was trying to sue for, but this home policy had $300,000 of liability and they paid out the maximum on the policy for a dog bite.
Okay.
So they're very not minor claims when they happen, and that's why the companies have a stance on what are the statistics, what are the chances, what are the payouts, and they decide, do we want to insure or not? And then they just have a list. So Pitbulls and Rottweilers, I don't believe I have any company unless it's a certified AKC service dog. But I network with a few agents that can. So when your
That's good to
clients
know.
call me, if I have to say, I'm sorry, you have a Pitbull, I can't insure you. Your next phone call, you're gonna get a yes, because I have people in my network that can say yes when I have to say no.
Can I tell you from a personal experience that we had 2 Shih Tzus?
Hmm.
And I will tell you that the Shih Tzus are more aggressive as dogs than the bigger dogs. These little dogs, they think that they're big dogs and they're very like protective or angry or whatever you call them. And the little kids come up and they want to play with them and they kind of, play with them a little harder because they're smaller and then boom, they bite them. And then you're like, oh my God,
Right,
but these dogs don't have lots of an insurance type of situation with them.
right, and that's not by the breed, but the next follow-up question is there any bite history in the past? So any dog, regardless of breed, if there's bite history, you're gonna have a problem getting insurance. If you
That
still
never
have
happened, by the way.
it. You have a question?
We do have a question. Does a buyer have to supply claim info?
Who's asking the question, please, John?
Patrick Pagano.
Pat Pagano, thank you so much for asking this question. Does the question again, please, Jonathan?
Does a buyer have to supply claim info?
No, part of when we're running the quotes, we run what's called a clue report. So that's the claim history report on the buyer, on the insured that we're about to write insurance for, but also on the property that they're about to buy. So these, even if they say, no, I've never had a claim, it will still show up on the clue report if there was a claim filed. So that's where we can actually comb through and make sure we have the right information.
That's very interesting stuff.
And that goes back about 5 years. So that's the timeline.
All right, so animals are a major question about insurance.
Underwriting question for sure.
Absolutely.
Not always a problem, right?
Damage to a home from the weather, always a question about fire damage in the past. It doesn't happen as much that I hear about fire as much. Water damage is something we
Yes.
have a big one about. All these big storms, tornadoes, hurricanes, or, just the fact that we have hydrostatic pressure and heavy rains for a couple of days and people have water in their basements.
Yes.
Now, I can tell you from my experience through home inspections, there's so many ways to eliminate water from the basement. Make sure your gutters are pitched away, make sure your gutters are clean. Make sure to do things that are very simple to eliminate the opportunity. But if you get water in your basement, right, and you don't have a basement system, because we're gonna get to that one too, what does the insurance company say?
So here's what you want to remember. Insurance is there for something that happens. It's not a maintenance product, right?
Right.
You still, as the homeowner, need to maintain your home and take care of it and pitch your gutters and clean your gutters and check on things to make sure they're not going awry. But when we got all this rain last week, when Ida came by, a friend of mine had 2.5 inches of water in their basement because their sump pump broke.
Mm-hmm.
So they had a system in place to pump water out in the case of this heavy rain, and it failed. So that is something that you have to have coverage on your policy it's not an automatic coverage. So I've actually seen quotes come to me to, hey, can you compare this? And it'll say like water backup declined. So you want to make sure you have water backup, sump pump failure coverage in order to have anything covered for that type
I
of water
want you to
loss.
know that in my 16 years, and I say this to you very sincerely, I never knew there was an opportunity to get insurance on a basement system that you have in your house to protect you in case
In case it
the
fails.
battery backup doesn't work. That's phenomenal information. Because I know I have a basement system. When I bought my house in 2008, 2010, we got hit with rain, hydrostatic pressure, boom, basement's flooded. Disaster. Our neighborhood came over, helped us out, got the water out. In the meantime, like, holy crap, we have to finish our basement again. So now I go to the insurance and you have to fight. And
there's a limitation. So some companies, it's either you have the coverage or you don't, and it pays $5,000, $10,000. Like it's a yes or no question.
Okay.
Other companies, you can take it and you can increase it up to sometimes up to 100,000.
Wow.
So it depends on the company. It depends on what their offerings are.
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to ask this question. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Mm-hmm.
What insurance companies specifically do you work with, if you can answer, that do work with basement water damage when you're the sump pump that you can get coverage for?
All of our companies, we have about 10 companies in Connecticut that we
Okay.
work with.
Okay.
All of them have an option to add water backup.
No kidding.
All of them. I don't sell a policy without water backup.
I have never knew this or
Yeah.
Okay, guys, if you're listening at home and you own a house, you purchased a house with us or your realtor, and you have insurance in your house, if you're not finding out about this, you need to make sure that tomorrow you pick the phone up, call your insurance company and say, hey, can I get water backup damage or
For future damage.
for future damage in my house, God forbid? And if they say no to you, here's what I'm gonna say to you. Number one, I'm gonna recommend calling Jennifer Crowley. Jennifer Crowley with Realogy Insurance. Let me just put a little plug for her because she's wonderful at what she does. Jennifer Crowley, Crowley, Jennifer, right? Or Jen.
Got it, yep.
And a phone number for Jennifer to reach out to her. Maybe you have questions. What's your work number to reach out to you?
855-809-3191. That's my direct work line.
855.
809.
809.
3191.
39.
31.
I'm sorry.
3191.
3191. It's a good thing we have multiple people here to make sure we have the right information. Flooding is not covered by.
Flooding. So when you think of flooding, I think of rising water outside, right? I live in Meriden, and downtown Meriden flooded when Elsa came through.
Okay.
So we are not a coastal town. We're
Right.
in the middle of Connecticut. So
Right.
you don't have to be waterfront to be in what's considered a higher risk flood zone,
Okay.
right?
Yes.
Flood insurance is completely separate. So if you have
Forget about flood insurance. We're talking specifically not flood insurance right now. We're talking about a house that's full of
water backup,
water backup. You had rain. It's been coming or snow over winter time.
your drain gets clogged and it's backed up, your sewers get clogged and they back up.
Sewers
That's what it's
also.
covering.
No
So it's
kidding.
covering a system that is meant to keep water away that fails, and now the water's coming in. That's what the water backup will cover you for. I don't want people to get confused and think, oh, I have water backup, so I'm covered for flood. Completely different type of water damage.
That's great information
Yeah.
and great to call Jennifer up and ask you these questions. Jonathan, I'm sure you put it on the screen for me to see. It's sitting there. It's not like you have to blink and forget what they said, and you got it in front of them, right, Jonathan?
Yep.
Awesome. All right. So any questions you have, please reach out to Jennifer. She's there at least 5 days a week, and she always returns her phone calls and messages. Let's talk about, so flood insurance. Let's talk about flood insurance specifically now, because we sell a lot of houses.
Yeah.
And as realtors, when someone wants to buy a house near the water or somewhere that quote unquote is considered an AE zone or X something zone or whatever you want to call the different places they have for flood, there's different costs associated to flood insurance. But I've had lots of great experience with you specifically with flood insurance situations where a house is deemed or shown to be in an AE zone. Now, as a realtor, we're not experienced in flood insurance. We're not supposed to talk about flood insurance. What we're supposed to do is get you to the professional. Because when I had a listing that came up with an AE zone, and I called Jennifer right away because the seller said, I've never had flood insurance before, never owned flood insurance. There's no way there can be flood insurance in this house. But the backyard or piece of that property comes in with the new maps now as in their flood insurance. What did you do?
So a lot of times, especially if somebody's been in their home for a long time, maybe they don't have a mortgage anymore, or the flood zone changed after their mortgage was paid off. Nobody's sending them a letter to say, hey, by the way, the flood zone changed, right? If
Right.
you don't have a loan anymore.
Correct.
Or maybe it's an estate, it's an inherited home that they're trying to sell and they have no idea. Or it's an investment property that they just bought it to flip it and they had no idea. So you can commit to this when you're representing the seller, where now the buyers are saying, wait a minute, I need flood insurance, I wasn't expecting that, and, you know, you have to factor that cost in for that mandatory insurance now, for can the buyer afford this house? So flood, the ratings are actually going to be changing October 1st. Again, but completely different. They're going to be getting, and I probably have 8 hours of training so far, and I have 2 tomorrow. Like, I'm getting so much training on it because I really want to wrap my head around it as much as I can to explain it better.
It's almost like the flood business is a business that's growing and they're looking to make some money back from all the money they lost.
Well, they're trying to charge you a more accurate price.
Or are they trying to take advantage of us?
No.
Good.
So, for example, I did 2 quotes this past week, and the new rating has brought the cost down.
I like it.
So, what I want to say is, if you're buying a home and you're closing in September, you're going to be in the current flood program, so it is what it is. But if you're buying a home and you're closing after October 1st, you want to make sure you're getting an accurate, current date says effective October 1st rate. And then as people start renewing their policies, so a year from now, they're automatically going to be given the option of the new rating or the old rating, and will be charged whichever is more favorable. They're not trying to charge you more for no reason.
That is important information. Are you watching or listening? Please make sure you let us know, because this is stuff that, I mean, as a buyer or a seller or a person who knows somebody who owns a home, period, you know somebody who owns a home, your mom, your dad, your sister, your brother, I guarantee you what information we'll cover here today, they've never heard before or don't have expertise, advice, or information on. I want to make sure that people understand this whole flood insurance thing, because I know personally from an experience where I had my clients talking to a couple different agents. One agent said, $10,000 for this policy for flood insurance. Deal that fell apart. My buyers buying this house. It was crazy. You talked to them. You did some serious investigation. You found out that the house, do you remember the property we're talking about without saying the actual address of the property in East Haven?
Yeah.
And the information they had in the records was wrong. I mean, it happens where information that, tell me.
Well, I've had to request some map researching to clarify. And there's a lot of variables. If you have multiple offers and one's a cash buyer, again, nobody's making them take flood, but if they have a mortgage, they're being forced to. They won't get the loan without flood. So that's going to differentiate, you know, what their out-of-pocket costs are when they're putting their offers in.
Absolutely.
But then a lot of lenders, if a corner of the property is in a special flood hazard zone, but the structure of the house is not, most of the banks aren't requiring them to purchase. Although at that point, we would recommend that they still do, because they're obviously very close to that risk.
And the flood insurance policy, even though it's slightly in there, is so insignificant.
Right.
If I remember correctly, it was about $650 for the year for flood insurance on a property that before that was going to be a no sale disaster.
Right.
Jonathan, do you have
Yeah, I have a question posted just now.
who's the question from?
Patrick again,
Pat Pagano, nice job, buddy, with these questions. Thank you so much for being here live with us on the PowerCast.
the question is, does FEMA play a role with flood insurance? And then after this question, we have to do the wheel.
Oh, wow, we're running that quick. Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to be Jen Crowley part 2. Okay.
Yes.
So FEMA
That's what we
is
say to all the guests.
the government-backed flood insurance. So our agency only sells and offers the FEMA government-backed flood insurance. There are other companies that you can get what's called private flood,
Okay.
but I would always recommend you speak with your lender to see if there's any requirements. Will they accept private flood? So a lot of times, and I discourage this greatly, but a lot of times sellers will say, I got a quote for what flood would cost for my house, and they put that out there for the buyers to use when they're factoring in their costs.
So you said it's a good thing or a bad
That's
thing?
a bad thing.
Why is it a bad thing?
Because if
based
they're
on the
putting
buyer's-
out,
I'm sorry.
if the seller's putting out a quote for private flood that they just went and got, and the buyer has a government-backed loan that won't accept private flood, you're telling that buyer that this is what flood's gonna cost, and that flood is not available to that particular buyer.
So a buyer, so as a listing agent, what's the best way? So obviously calling you first, number one. Number two, and you looking at the property for potential flood, you're looking at it much more broad, right? I'm guessing. so that based on if it's an FHA loan or a conventional loan, let's just use those two as examples, or a VA even for that matter, you're gonna give me a price based on, no?
No,
Okay.
so as the seller, you only want to put out there the facts.
Okay,
So if you have a flood policy in place, you want to provide a copy of that,
okay.
because that buyer could take your policy as option one,
Oh, no kidding.
right?
But it may be too high,
It may be too high.
maybe they didn't know the things that you're talking about and they got stuck with a flood
So if
policy.
you have an active policy, you can share that policy.
But better than that.
And then have the buyer call me, so I can give them a real rate.
Right.
There's so many variables. So you don't want to put out a quote if that buyer's not going to be able to get that quote.
Right.
You're almost like false advertising a price, and they're making a huge buying decision based on the price you're providing, and it could be completely inaccurate. And I've seen it be too high, and I've seen it be too low.
Let me ask you a question. When it comes to insurance on a home, how does credit play a role?
So we run what's called an insurance score.
Mhm.
So we have to check prior loss history and insurance scores. It checks for the prior claims. A more favorable credit score will sometimes lead to a more favorable insurance score, but we do not ask for socials, and we are
Okay.
not doing a full credit check like your lender is.
Well, let's just say forget the seller for one moment on the past history. You're a first-time buyer.
Yep.
You've never owned a home. You have no history of insurance at all whatsoever. Actually, the only insurance you may have is a car insurance.
Right.
Okay, and with car insurance, if you've had a good driving record, does it help play a role in your insurance on a house?
Some companies are starting to look at both when they're factoring in rate,
Okay, that's fair.
but a lot of times it's, they're usually two separate complete policies, so we can try and get some multi-policy discounts if we package them together. But usually, not every company is gonna say, oh, you were in a car accident, so I'm gonna give you a higher rate on your homeowners.
That's good to know. So you could have had a poor driving record and still get a great insurance policy for your house.
You might not get that multi-policy credit, because you might not want my auto rate if you're
Right.
before driving record.
So let's say now you have a great driving record, Jonathan, your head's in the thing with it, by the way, I'm sorry, everybody. So you may have a great driving record or poor, it has nothing to do with this with your insurance. But let's just talk about the insurance, so you're getting a homeowner's insurance. If you have the ability to combine home and auto, you typically will save,
It can be upwards of 20-30%.
wow,
So
20-30%.
It depends on the company.
Holy moly.
A lot of times, these first-time home buyers, they have car insurance to just get their car registered, and they don't realize that now if they're in a car accident, they don't have enough coverage there where they could lose their house. So we'll have to set up another session. I can talk
definitely-
insurance all
Listen, this
all day
information
long.
is so impressive, everybody. I hope you're listening and watching and understanding what's going on, because there are so many things to cover. We talked just about 2 or 3 right now in about 30 minutes time. We'll definitely bring Jennifer back on to talk more about insurance for the opportunity in buying a house. Obviously, auto insurance. There are so many questions regarding flood, past experiences the house has had, but not to fear things. Right? The most important thing is the buyer. Don't have fear. Don't listen to, I'm sorry to say this, but don't listen to mom and dad because mom and dad had a bad experience. A lot of kids, and I say kids, I mean anywhere between the age of 22 and 45, okay? I still consider myself quote unquote a kid, right? And when I say that people are buying a house for the first time and they hear these stories from people in their family that, oh my God, this and that, blah, 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 and it's not so bad. If I ask you this last question, house is about 2,000 square feet. The purchase price, let's just say, is $400,000. Is there a ballpark on insurance? Is there a ballpark on what a yearly insurance would be?
I'm gonna say no. I'm going to say there are too many variables, and like I said, you and I would have completely different prices.
Okay.
So first-time home buyers, I love to work with first-time home buyers. I like to educate, and I don't want you to ever feel like you're being sold. I want you to learn about the process. So anybody that has questions, I would be more than happy to kind of handhold and walk through.
I think it's
Good
important to make sure you
insurance
guys not only educate yourself as much as possible, but this is one of the most important conversations you can have and learn about when it comes to buying a house. Talk to your realtor. Make sure they put you in touch with, listen, your realtor is going to put you in touch with the right people. If you cannot, trust and loyalty are the two most important things in this process. Buying a house, selling a house, if you don't have the trust and loyalty with your realtor to be making recommendations to you, to the best people about information to help you succeed, the problem starts right there.
Yeah.
make sure to call Jennifer. Her number's on the screen. Ask the questions. Friends, family, your parents, make sure that they have the right insurance for themselves as well. And thank you so much for being here
Thank
today.
you.
I really appreciate this opportunity. We have a couple things to talk about before we go. One is we have a spinning wheel. We've got a lot of people who have a chance to win this tumbler over here. I want to thank everybody who's been winning this past couple of weeks. I was away for the last 2.5 weeks in Florida, so I apologize. They will be going out this week to you, the tumblers, number 2. And number 3 is I want to thank you all so much for following us Instagram, Facebook, Twitch, YouTube. Make sure to follow, share our presentations. We hope that it's very much education to everybody here, so they can learn things. And we learn things together over here as much as fun as we're having over here too. All right, let's go to the wheel, Jonathan. Have a knot from our most amazing tumblers who's been providing this for us as we've been doing this, having fun together. All right, Jonathan, let's spin this wheel. Let's see who wins this week. I can't see.
All right, and our winner is Shalom Lamel. Isn't that your dad?
That is my father. Is my father allowed to win? I don't think my father's allowed to win a tumbler.
No, he's not.
He cannot win a tumbler. That's ironic, but I appreciate the fact that he won. So we have to go to another winner.
Another winner. Let's see. What should be Danny? Elvia Perez. I think she's from TikTok, but I will double check that. For you.
All right. Let's see her name again over there. I can't see it.
Elvia Perez.
Elvia Perez. Thank you so much for following us over here on Team Powerhouse, the PowerCast. Any more questions over there, John, before we go?
Nope.
Excellent.
No, Patrick says it's rigged.
I promise you it's not rigged, Patrick. And there are so many clients and friends who love to win. The fact that my father's name popped up, that's kind of funny. I love the fact that my father watches us over here, which is great. It's great to have your parents supporting me, and hopefully my family's supporting me. I think my son over there is watching along tonight. I hope he is. But more importantly, thank you all so much for following us over here on the PowerCast. We're going to see you next week, next Tuesday, and we'll look forward to having Jennifer back on the show.
Awesome.
Thank you guys so much.
Bye.
Have a great day. Talk to
Bye.
you soon.